I heard the wheels roll over the old wooden boards of the dock, soft and slow, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping dog. The night air was cold on my face. The lake in front of me was black and quiet, like a big open mouth. My hands were folded in my lap. I did not move. I could feel two people behind me. I knew their footsteps, their smell, even the way they breathed when they were nervous. The wheelchair bumped as they pushed me closer to the edge. One more hard push and I would go straight into the water. "Are you sure the camera is off?" one of them whispered. "Yes. I cut the power earlier. She will just roll in, sink, and that is it," the other voice said. They were wrong. I felt the front wheels reach the very end of the dock. The old wood creaked. The night bugs hummed over the lake. My heart was beating so loud I was sure they could hear it. Then I heard the words that burned into my bones. "She drowned. Now we get the 15 million. 15 million. They said it like it was a prize. Like I was not even a person, just a key to a big metal box. They thought I could not move. They thought I could not swim. They thought there was no proof. But I can swim. I learned as a little girl in this same lake. And above us, fixed high on the post at the start of the dock, a tiny red light glowed. The camera on the dock was not off. It was watching everything. They did not look up. They did not see it. I felt the last, sharp shove. The wheelchair rolled forward. For a second the world slowed down. My stomach lifted into my throat. The front wheels slid off the edge, and the whole chair tipped. Cold water rose up to swallow me. As the lake closed over my head and the dark water rushed into my ears, I opened my eyes and turned my body, letting go of the chair. I pushed down with my legs and arms, strong and sure after all these years. I started to swim deeper instead of up, away from the light, away from the surface, away from them. Up above, the dock grew small, and the red eye of the camera watched in silence. I knew one thing for sure as my lungs began to burn. If I came out of that lake, I was not coming out as their victim. I was coming out with a plan. And I was not going to be the only one who would feel fear. But before I tell you what happened under that water, and after it, I need to tell you how we got there in the first place. Because people do not wake up one morning and decide to murder their own grandmother. It starts small. It starts quiet. It starts with a house, a will, and a very large number. My name is Grace Turner. I am 74 years old. I have silver hair, strong arms, and legs that work, but not as fast as they used to. The doctors told me I should use a wheelchair so I would not fall and break my hips. So I listened. Most people, when they look at me in that chair, see something weak. Slow, easy to push, easy to control. They do not know me. I grew up in this same lakeside house with my parents and 3 brothers. I climbed trees, fell out of them, learned to swim in the cold spring water, and helped my father fix the roof when I was 10. I married my husband, Henry, when I was 22. We bought the house from my parents when they moved to the city. We had one child, our son, Daniel. Henry passed away 3 years ago. He was a quiet man, but he had a sharp mind for business. Over the years, he bought some land, some stocks, and a small company. When he died, the bank man told me our money, the land, and everything together was worth around $15 million. 15 million. To me, that number meant this: I would not be a burden to anyone. I could pay for my own care, help my family, give to my church, and leave something behind for children who needed it. To other people, that number meant something very different. Daniel moved back into the house 6 months after his father died. He said he wanted to help me out. He brought his wife, Claire, and their 2 children, Emily and Jack. At first, I was happy. The house had been so quiet. The sound of children's feet on the stairs felt like sunlight on cold skin. Emily would run in with her school drawings. Jack would bring me his toy cars and make little racing sounds on the arm of my chair. "Grandma, look, this one is the fastest," he would say. I would laugh and cheer, and for a while, everything felt warm again. Daniel carried my groceries. Claire cooked dinner most nights. They fixed the broken fence and painted the porch. "We are a team now, Mom," Daniel told me. "You do not need to worry about anything." I wanted to believe him. That was my first mistake. Little signs started to show. Not big things at first. Little things, like tiny stones that roll down a hill long before the big landslide. I noticed that Claire held my pills longer than she needed to when she brought them. She would count them twice, her eyes narrow, her lips tight. "You sure this is the right dose, Grace?" she asked once. "You are taking a lot of medication now." "It is what the doctor ordered," I said. She frowned and put them on the side table without another word. When the bank statements came in the mail, Daniel would say, "I will take care of those, Mom. You should rest. Numbers are boring." He would tuck the envelopes into his jacket and walk away. "You know I can still read, Daniel," I told him once with a small smile. "Of course, Mom," he said, laughing. "I am only trying to help." But the next month, I did not even see the mail. The nurse from the town clinic, a kind young woman named Sarah, started visiting once a week to check my blood pressure and help me move my legs. We would talk about her studies, her dog, and the new cafe in town. I liked her. She treated me like a person, not like furniture. One afternoon, I heard raised voices in the hallway. "I do not think she needs you every week," Claire said. "We can handle simple things. We do not need to spend money on this." "It is doctor's orders," Sarah replied, calm but firm. "And it is from her account. Mrs. Turner asked for this." I wheeled myself closer to the door, keeping quiet. "There are better ways to use that money," Daniel said. "Mom is not going anywhere. We should think about the future." The future. That word sat heavy in my chest. 2 weeks later, Sarah stopped coming. When I called the clinic to ask why, the receptionist sounded surprised. "Mrs. Turner, your son said you no longer wanted home visits," she told me. I thanked her, hung up slowly, and folded my hands. My own son had spoken for me and cut off my care. Why? If you are listening to this, I want you to remember something. Bad people often start their bad acts with a smile and the words, "I am only thinking of you." Another strange thing, Claire began to talk about wills a lot. "Grace, do you have everything in order?" she asked as she wiped the kitchen counter one evening. "It is good to be prepared. You never know what can happen at your age." "At my age, I have already seen what can happen," I replied. "Yes, I have a will." "May we see it?" Daniel asked, too fast. "Just so we know what to do if something happens. We would not want any confusion." He smiled, but his eyes were hard. "I will think about it," I said. That night, I made a slow trip down the hall to my study. I locked the door, opened the safe, and stared at the old will inside. Henry and I had made it years ago. In it, Daniel would get almost everything. The house, the money, the land. There were small gifts set aside for the church and a children's home, but nothing large. I thought about my son's tight face, Claire's sharp voice, the way they had dismissed my nurse. I thought of how they talked over me when doctors came. How I had become a piece of furniture in my own house. I took the will out and placed it flat on the desk. My hand shook a little, but my mind was clear. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Anderson. He was older than Daniel, younger than me, and had known Henry for years. "I want to change my will," I told him. "And I want it to be quiet. No one must know." He came to the house that afternoon. Daniel and Claire were out with the children. We sat in the study with the door closed. "What do you want, Mrs. Turner?" he asked kindly. "I want half of my money to go to the children's home," I said. "And the other half to be put in a trust for Emily and Jack. They can get it when they turn 21. I will leave Daniel something small. Enough that no one can say I forgot him. But not enough for him to become careless." Mr. Anderson looked at me for a long time. "You know this will upset him," he said. "I know," I replied. "But I am not blind. I see how he and Claire talk. They are already counting the money as if I am gone." He nodded and drew up the new papers. I signed them with a steady hand. "Keep this copy in your safe," he said, "and I will file the rest." "Do you want anyone told?" "No," I said. "Not yet." After he left, I wheeled myself to the back door and looked out at the lake. The water rippled in the afternoon breeze. The old wooden dock stretched out like a finger pointing to the middle. On the highest post near the shore, a little camera watched the water. That camera had been Henry's idea years ago. He liked to watch the sunrise over the lake on his tablet when his legs started to hurt. After he died, the camera stayed, forgotten by most of us. I stared at it for a long time. Later that week, when Daniel was at work and Claire had taken the children to school, I called a local security company. "I want a few more cameras put in," I said. "One in the hall, one in the kitchen, and a better one on the dock." Quietly. No loud vans. No big signs. The man on the phone did not ask many questions. 2 days later, they came while Daniel and Claire were gone. They upgraded the dock camera, tiny and strong, with a red light that only showed at night, and placed 2 more inside the house, hidden where no one would notice. "Why do you want these, ma'am?" the young installer asked politely. "Because some people think old women do not see very well," I said. "I want to prove them wrong." He laughed, but I did not. From then on, every night before I slept, I checked the little screen on my tablet. I could see the dock, the kitchen, the hallway. I watched the light rise and fall on the water. I watched my own front door. It made me feel less alone. The first real sign of danger came on a bright Sunday afternoon. It was not night. It was not stormy. It did not look like the day when someone might die. That is the trick of life. The worst things do not always happen when the sky is dark. Daniel had wheeled me out into the garden, for some fresh air. Claire was at the kitchen window, washing dishes and staring out at us. The children were playing with a ball on the grass. The backyard sloped gently down towards the lake. At the top of the slope was the stone path and patio. Lower down, the grass became steeper and led straight to the dock. "Stay up here, Emily. Do not kick the ball too hard," I called. "Yes, Grandma," she shouted back. Daniel parked my wheelchair near the stone edge of the patio, right at the start of the slope. "You good here, Mom?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Just lock the brakes, please." "Of course," he said. I heard a soft click. He patted my shoulder. "We will be right over there." He walked down the yard to help Jack with the ball. For a few minutes, everything seemed normal. The birds were singing. The sun was warm on my hands. I watched my grandchildren laugh. Then the ball rolled past them, bumping along the grass. It stopped a little way from my chair. "I will get it, Grandma," Emily said, running up the slope. She bent to pick up the ball next to my front wheel, and as she did, she bumped the side of the chair with her hip. It was not hard, just a light knock. The wheelchair moved. For a second, I thought I imagined it. Then it rolled again. One slow inch. Then another. The brakes were not on. I felt the chair begin to shift forward, the slope pulling me down. My hands grabbed the wheels, but my fingers slipped. The rubber was too smooth. The chair started to roll faster. "Grandma," Emily shouted, eyes wide. The grass in front of me blurred. The dock at the bottom of the yard grew closer with each second. I could feel my whole body tipping forward. If I reached the dock at this speed, the chair could shoot straight off into the water. For a heartbeat, I saw it in my mind, the splash, the cold, the silence. "Grandma, no." Emily threw herself at the back of the chair. The force pushed her down to her knees, but she held on, digging her heels into the grass, her small arms shaking. The chair slowed, then stopped, only a few feet down the slope. My heart hammered in my chest. I could smell the lake, sharp and wet, carried by the wind. Daniel came running up the hill, his face pale. "What happened?" he shouted. "The brakes," I said, my voice low. "You did not lock the brakes." "I did," he said at once. "I swear I did." "Maybe Emily pushed you too hard." "I barely touched it," Emily cried, still breathing hard. Grandma was rolling by herself. He glared at her, then forced a smile. "It was an accident," he said. "Let me take you back up, Mom." He grabbed the handles and started to push me back up the hill. His hands felt too tight on the chair. As we reached the patio, I turned my head and looked back toward the house. Claire stood at the kitchen window, her hands still in the soapy water. She was watching us. Not with fear, not with shock. She was watching with a strange, flat face. And in that moment, as my chair came to a stop on the patio, I saw it. Just for a second. The smallest curve at the corner of her mouth. A smile. The kind of smile that does not belong on the face of someone who almost lost their mother-in-law. My blood went cold. Because I knew, right then, that just like the brakes on my chair, something in my family had been quietly unlocked. And whatever had just started rolling was not going to stop easily. Daniel pushed my wheelchair back onto the patio, pretending everything was normal. But nothing about that moment was normal. Nothing about the smile I saw on Claire's face was normal. And nothing about the brakes failing on a slope that led straight to deep water could ever be called a simple accident. I sat very still, letting the warm sun settle on my arms. My heart beat fast, but my face stayed calm. That is something age teaches you. When you get older, danger becomes something you learn to watch quietly. You don't scream. You don't rush. You observe. You store things in your mind like puzzle pieces. Then one day, they fit together. But Emily was not old. She was shaking as she stood beside me. Her little hands were red from gripping the chair so hard. "Grandma, why did you roll like that?" she asked. Before I could answer, Daniel put his arm around her shoulders. "It was an accident," he said a little too quickly. "She was on a hill. The chair must have slipped. My hip touched it lightly," she said. "It shouldn't have moved." Daniel crouched down to her height. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said. "Grandma is fine. Let's forget it, okay?" But she didn't look convinced. She looked at the slope, then at my chair, then at me. Children notice things adults try to hide. She saw my fear before I could cover it. Daniel wheeled me toward the house. When we reached the kitchen door, Claire stepped aside to let us in. She didn't say a word, but her eyes followed every movement I made. "I'm going to check the brakes," Daniel said once he parked me in the corner of the kitchen. "Just to see what happened." He leaned down and pressed the brake lever. There was a soft click. "There," he said. "It works fine." I looked at his hands. At the lever. At his face. I said nothing. Claire dried her hands on a towel. "Maybe the grass was wet," she offered with a small smile. "Things slip on wet grass." "But the brakes," Emily started. "Emily," Claire said gently. "Go wash up for lunch." The little girl hesitated. I nodded to her softly, and she went. Daniel stood, brushed off his knees, and said, "Well, crisis over." "No," I said, "not over." For the first time since the incident, both of them looked directly at me. They stared as if they wanted to know what I meant but didn't want to ask. But I didn't explain. I folded my hands in my lap and smiled politely. "Thank you for helping me," I said. Then I rolled myself to the table. My hands weren't as strong as before, but they were steady enough to guide the wheels. Daniel watched me do it without trying to stop me. His eyes narrowed for 1 second. Just one. Claire made grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch. The smell of butter filled the air. The low hum of the refrigerator vibrated through the floor. Everything in that moment looked normal, but it felt like a thin cloth covering something sharp. Halfway through the meal, the doorbell rang. Daniel got up. "I'll get it." I listened closely. The door opened. A man's voice came through. "Package for Mrs. Turner." That would be the new medical alert bracelet I ordered last week. It had a hidden GPS, a panic button, and a voice recorder. I didn't trust anyone to call for help if something happened. Not anymore. I heard Daniel say, "I'll sign for it." I waited for him to bring the package to me. He didn't. When he came back, his hands were empty. "Who was it?" Claire asked casually. "Wrong house," he replied. My fingers tightened on my fork. I said nothing, but my mind added another puzzle piece. After lunch, Emily tugged my sleeve. "Grandma, can I show you something?" Of course. She brought out a notebook filled with little drawings. One page showed a house on a hill. Another page showed a woman in a wheelchair. Another page showed a lake. "This is our family," she said, pointing. "You're a good artist," I told her. She nodded, flipped a page, and whispered, "Grandma, did you almost get hurt today?" Daniel, who was near the sink, turned his head slightly. He was listening. I touched her hand gently. "You saved me," I said. "That is what matters." She nodded again, but her eyes stayed troubled. That night, I stayed awake long after everyone else had gone to sleep. The house was quiet except for the creaking of the old wood and the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I unlocked the safe in my study and pulled out a small phone, one with no apps, no internet, no connections except one emergency number. I kept it hidden for years, just in case of something dangerous. Henry insisted we each have one. I charged it. I tested it. I slipped it into a hidden pocket sewn inside my cardigan. Then I turned on the tablet screen that showed the dock camera. The video from that day showed everything. The children playing, the slope, my chair rolling. Emily throwing herself behind me. Daniel running. Claire watching from the window. I watched the footage twice. 3 times. 4. Every time, I saw the same thing, the brakes never moved. Daniel never locked them. Claire never looked surprised. The next morning, I pretended everything was normal. I asked for breakfast. I laughed at Jack's jokes. I talked about the garden. Daniel relaxed. Claire relaxed. That is what predators do. They relax when they think their prey has accepted its fate. Later that afternoon, Claire came into my room carrying a glass of water and my pills. "Time for your medication," she said cheerfully. She placed the pills in my hand. I looked at them closely. The shapes were right, but the colors seemed off. One pill looked more orange than before. Another looked chalkier. "What are these?" I asked. "The usual," she said. "Doctor's orders." I did not put them in my mouth. Instead, I dropped them into the little pocket of my cardigan when she turned away. That night, I searched the pills online. I found pictures of every one I was supposed to take. 2 did not match. I sat back in my chair and let the truth settle around me like cold air. Claire had changed my medicine. But why? To make me confused, weak, sick, easy to lose in an accident. I did not sleep that night. 2 days later, Sarah, the nurse, came to visit. She arrived without calling. She said she was checking on me, but the look on her face told me there was more to it. "Mrs. Turner, we got a call," she said softly. "Someone tried to renew a prescription for you. A prescription the doctor never gave." My heart sank. "Who?" "Someone in your house." Before I could answer, Claire walked in briskly. "Oh, Sarah, we don't need home visits anymore." Sarah turned, her face firm. "Actually, the clinic has restarted them. Doctor's orders." Claire froze. "Why?" "Mrs. Turner's blood test results looked unusual. I hadn't had blood drawn in weeks. Which meant someone else had requested tests. Someone who wanted to monitor how the changed medicine affected me." Claire forced a smile. "We're all just trying to help her." Sarah didn't smile. "Her doctor will want to talk to you. Both of you." Claire's face tightened almost imperceptibly. After Sarah left, Daniel pulled Claire into the living room, and they whispered loudly. They thought I couldn't hear. But I heard every word. "You said the pills would make her tired, not sick," Daniel snapped. Claire hissed. "You told me to do something. You said she was getting suspicious." "She wasn't supposed to notice," he said. "You rushed it. You're the one who messed up the brakes." She whispered harshly. My blood iced. Brakes. Pills. Accidents. And suddenly, the slope incident didn't look accidental at all. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Daniel became overly helpful. Claire became overly sweet. They brought me tea every hour. They fluffed my pillows. They asked if I needed a blanket every 10 minutes. That is how guilty people behave right before they try something bigger. On Thursday evening, Daniel walked into my room. "Mom," he said gently. "We're planning a little family picnic tomorrow by the lake. We'll push your chair onto the dock so you can watch the kids swim. It'll be fun." A picnic. On the lake. On the dock. My skin prickled. But I smiled. "That sounds lovely." "Good," he said. "We all need fresh air." That night, I took out a dry bag from my closet. Inside it, I packed the emergency phone, a flashlight, a small knife, a whistle, a floating wrist strap. I tied the bag discreetly under my cardigan, taped flat against my ribs so no one would see the bulge. Then I opened my tablet and checked the dock camera again. The red light blinked like a heartbeat. The next morning, the family was in unusually good spirits. Claire made pancakes. Emily and Jack packed a basket of fruit and juice. Daniel pushed my chair with too much enthusiasm. It was a bright day. The lake was calm and glittering. A soft breeze brushed the trees. The dock looked peaceful. Too peaceful. They rolled me all the way down the yard. All the way onto the dock. I glanced up at the camera. The tiny red light was on. Daniel parked me at the very end of the dock. Claire set the picnic basket near the bench. "Kids," she called, "go play near the water." They ran off laughing. Then Daniel stepped behind me. And I felt it. A stillness. Like the world holding its breath. He placed both hands on the wheelchair handles. Too tight. Too steady. Claire moved beside him. "We love you, Mom," she said softly. Their shadows fell over me. Then Daniel whispered, "Just lean forward a little." And in that instant, he shoved the wheelchair with all his strength. It surged forward. My stomach dropped. The world blurred. The water rushed up to meet me. And the last thing I heard before the splash was Claire's voice, calm and chilling. "It looks like she fell." The lake swallowed me whole. And everything turned black. The cold water wrapped around me like a fist. It rushed into my ears, pushed against my chest, and tried to steal every bit of air inside me. The shock of the temperature made my muscles clench, but I forced myself to relax. Panicking in water is how people drown. I learned that as a girl. I learned it again as a mother. And now, those lessons were the only things standing between life and death. As I sank deeper, the sunlight above me turned dim and wavy. The dock became a shadow. The legs of the people who pushed me blurred into dark shapes moving slowly on the surface. I could not hear their voices clearly through the water, but I saw their silhouettes leaning toward each other. Talking, waiting, watching. They expected me to sink with the chair. They expected me to die quietly. What they did not expect was this: I had already slipped out of the straps the moment the chair tipped. I kicked away from it, letting it drag downward like a heavy anchor. The lake was deeper than it looked. I had measured it years ago when Henry wanted to install a diving platform. At the deepest point, it reached almost 20 feet. If someone wanted a body to disappear, this lake would seem perfect. But I was not a body yet. I pushed myself downward first, away from where I fell. They would assume I'd gone straight to the bottom. That gave me precious seconds. Precious space. My lungs burned. I needed air, but I held my breath. I could not afford to surface near them. I scanned the greenish water, looking for a darker shape, something that could help me. Then I saw it. The old metal ladder under the dock. It had been there for decades, back when people used to swim under the boards to scare each other. The metal was rusty, but it was still strong. My fingers wrapped around one of the rungs. I pulled myself slowly upward, staying beneath the dock so they would not see me break the surface. I tilted my head slightly, letting my nose and mouth rise into the tiny pocket of air trapped between the wooden planks and the water. It smelled like wet fish and old wood, but it was air. I breathed as quietly as I could. Above, I heard voices. "What if she floats back up?" Claire's voice, low and shaky. "She won't," Daniel said. "She's in a chair. It'll take her down." "What if the camera?" "I turned it off," he snapped. I cut the wire. But he didn't know about the upgrade. He didn't know I changed the system. He didn't know the new camera did not have a wired power line. It used solar charging and internal memory. It never shut off. I gripped the ladder tight. The knowledge gave me strength. "So, that's it," Claire whispered. "Yes," Daniel said. "We wait. Then we call the police. We'll say she leaned too far forward. She fell. We tried to help. The chair slipped. It was an accident." My heart twisted. I remembered holding that boy as a baby, tucking him into bed, kissing his bruised knees, telling him he could be anything he wanted. I never imagined he would choose this. Another voice spoke. "Emily." Small, scared, shaking. "Where's Grandma?" No one answered at first. Then Daniel said, "Sweetie, Grandma fell into the water." Silence. "Is she okay?" she asked. Silence again. Emily screamed, "Where is she? Where's Grandma?" Something inside me broke at that sound. I pulled myself along the underside of the dock, moving slowly from one rung to the next. My chest hurt with every breath I stole from the pocket of air. I could not come out yet. Not with them standing there. Not with danger so close. I reached the far edge of the dock. The sunlight flickered brightly at the corner, marking the open water beyond. I waited. I listened. Finally, I heard footsteps walking away. Then running. Then voices fading. "I'm calling for help. Get the kids inside. Mom, Mom." The yard grew quiet again. I surfaced in the far shadow of the dock, far from where anyone could see me from the shore. I took slow, deep breaths, filling my lungs until they stopped shaking. My cardigan felt heavy, my hair stuck to my face. But the dry bag taped under my clothes was safe. I stayed low in the water and swam toward the thin line of reeds to the right of the dock. When I reached them, I ducked underneath their leafy cover. I crouched in the water until only my eyes were above the surface. The house was in chaos. Daniel ran inside shouting for Claire. Claire pretended to cry, holding her phone like she was calling the police, but I didn't hear her say anything. Kids were screaming. Nothing about it looked like grief. It looked like performance. I needed to move. Staying in the water too long would make me weak. I needed to get out and away before they came back to search the lake. Slowly, quietly, I pushed through the reeds and dragged myself toward the narrow strip of trees that lined the property on the east side. The mud clung to my hands. The roots scraped my legs. But I kept going. I crawled behind a fallen log where the trees grew thicker. Then I reached under my cardigan and pulled out the dry bag. My fingers trembled as I opened it, but everything inside was safe. The emergency phone, the flashlight, the knife, the whistle, the floating strap. I held the phone. It worked. The screen lit up softly. One number was saved inside. Mr. Anderson, my lawyer. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, Mrs. Turner. He answered, startled. Is everything all right? It's early. No, I whispered. Everything is not all right. He must have heard the fear in my voice because he went silent. Where are you? He asked quietly. In the woods near the lake. Why? They pushed my wheelchair into the water, I said. They tried to kill me. He sucked in a sharp breath. Mrs. Turner, listen carefully. Do not go back to the house. Do not confront them. Stay hidden. I'm calling the sheriff right now. No, I whispered quickly. Not yet. Why not? Because they think I'm dead. That gives me time. Time to gather proof. Time to protect Emily and Jack. There was a long pause. You're hurt, he said. You're cold. You're 74. I'm alive, I replied. That's enough. Another pause. Then, what do you need? I need you to protect the will, I said. And I need someone you trust, someone outside this town, to come here quietly. Someone who can help me without going through Daniel or Claire. I know someone, he said. A retired detective. Good man. I'll send him. Thank you. Stay hidden, he said again. I ended the call. I sat there in the damp leaves, shivering, listening to the wind rustle the trees. The lake water dripped from my clothes. The birds chirped in the branches overhead. I was alive, but I could not stay where I was long. They would start searching. They would call the police. The lake would fill with boats. People would drag nets through the water. And when they did not find my body, things would get worse. I thought about Emily's scream. About the fear in her voice. About the danger she was in. I would not let them hurt her. I stood slowly, using the log for balance. My legs trembled but held. Then I began to move deeper into the woods. The ground was soft under my feet. My clothes stuck to my skin. My breath puffed in the cold morning air. I followed the old forest trail Henry and I used to walk when we wanted to be alone. Hardly anyone knew about it. The trees grew thick around it, hiding it from view. Every step was slow, but I kept going. After half an hour, I reached the old hunting shed. It was small, wooden, and half collapsed. But it would hide me for a little while. I pushed the door open. It groaned loudly. Inside, it smelled like dust and pine sap. I sat on the old wooden bench and tried to catch my breath. Then I heard something. A twig snapped. I froze. Another twig cracked. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving toward the shed. My heart hammered against my ribs. I held the knife tightly. The footsteps drew closer. A shadow appeared outside the thin crack under the door. Then a voice. A familiar voice. Daniel. Mom, he whispered. Are you in there? My blood turned to ice. How did he know? How did he find me? Had he seen footprints? Had he guessed where I'd go? Mom, he said again. Come out, please. I stayed silent. He stepped closer. His shadow darkened the doorway. Mom, I know you're alive. I pressed myself against the wall, breath shallow. I saw something in the water, he continued. A shape. Not the chair. Not your body. Something swimming toward the reeds. He paused. You're stronger than I thought. I tightened my grip on the knife. Then he said the words that made my blood freeze completely. If you come out now, I promise I won't make it painful. A long silence followed. Then, he grabbed the shed door handle. And pulled hard. The door tore open. We locked eyes. He stood there panting, mud on his shoes, panic in his eyes, but not the panic of someone who lost his mother. The panic of someone losing control of his plan. He stepped inside. I stepped backward. His voice dropped to a whisper. This time, I'll do it myself. He lunged, and the entire shed wall behind me collapsed outward with a violent crash. A massive branch fell, missing me by inches. The floor split. The ground gave way, and I fell backward into a deep hole hidden beneath the rotten boards. Plunging into darkness. I plunged into darkness before I could even scream. The fall was fast, cold, and violent. Dirt scraped my arms. Roots whipped past my face. For a moment, the world spun upside down, and all I could hear was the roar of collapsing wood above me. Then, suddenly, my body hit something hard and uneven. Pain exploded across my side. I rolled over, coughing, gasping, trying to understand where I was. The air was thick with dust. Soil rained down in soft, dry showers. Above me, the rectangular opening of the shed looked small and far away. Jagged pieces of the flooring hung like broken teeth along the edges. I had fallen into an old sinkhole, a deep one, maybe 8 or 9 feet down. My ribs ached. My knees throbbed. But I was alive. And then I remembered, Daniel had been right there when the ground gave way. I scrambled up onto my elbows, heart pounding, terrified of what I would see when I looked up. His shadow loomed at the top of the hole. He stood perfectly still, staring down at me through the swirling dust. His chest rose and fell. His eyes were wide, not with fear, but with the wild frustration of someone whose plan had gone wrong twice in one day. Mom, he said softly, you just don't know when to quit. I didn't answer. He crouched, resting his elbows on his knees, studying me like a puzzle he meant to solve. Dirt stuck to his hair. Sweat ran down his temples. I wasn't going to chase you, he continued. But after I didn't find your body in the water, I knew you'd gone somewhere you felt safe. This trail, this shed, I remembered Dad mentioning it when I was a kid. He exhaled slowly. And here you are. I tried to stand, but the pain in my side made me gasp. Daniel heard it. Did the fall hurt? He asked, tilting his head. Good. Maybe that will make things easier. His voice was calm in a way that made my skin crawl. He wasn't angry. He wasn't panicking. He was planning. Daniel, I said, trying to steady my voice, look at yourself. Listen to what you're saying. You're talking to me like I'm nothing. You were supposed to make this easy. He snapped suddenly. You were supposed to stay in that chair. You were supposed to slip under the water. You weren't supposed to fight. My jaw tightened. So this is who you became, I whispered. A man who kills his mother for money. His face twisted. No, a man who does what he has to do. He stood again and kicked at a loose plank near the hole. It slid inward, falling beside me in a shower of dust. I flinched. You're lucky that branch fell, he said. If not, we'd be done already. You don't have to do this, I said. Yes, I do. He rubbed his forehead. You changed the will, didn't you? The lawyer told you something. You froze me out. That's why you were acting strange. So he had been watching me. Money doesn't make a family, Daniel, I said quietly. Love does. He laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Love doesn't pay bills, he said. Love doesn't fix my life. That money could change everything. Claire and I could start over. Pay off debts. Get out of this worthless town. By killing your mother. He glared at me. You were going to leave everything to the kids, he said. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I would just smile and watch you give away my future? His future. Mine, apparently, didn't matter. He kicked another plank. It fell. Dust filled the air again. You're trapped, he said. Even if that fall didn't kill you, the next one will. I pressed my back against the dirt wall. The pain was getting worse. My ribs felt like they were grinding. But I couldn't let him see fear. Daniel, I said softly, Emily and Jack are watching you. They saw you push my chair. They heard you lie. The camera on the dock. He stiffened. What camera? I let the silence answer him. His face drained of color. No, he whispered. Yes, I said. Everything is recorded. He shook his head quickly. I cut the wire. You cut the old wire, I said. The camera was upgraded. His eyes widened with real fear now, not for me, but for himself. You're lying, he said. But his voice cracked. You're lying, he shouted, grabbing his hair. I saw something shift inside him. Something desperate. Something dangerous. No one will ever find that footage, he said. No one will ever find you. He disappeared from the edge of the hole. My heart hammered. His footsteps circled the shed. Then, silence. I waited, afraid to breathe. Then I heard it. Metal scraping. Something dragging. He returned to the edge, rolling a heavy boulder toward the hole. My stomach dropped. He was going to seal me in. Daniel, I said sharply. Stop. Think. This isn't you. Don't talk to me like you know me, he whispered. You don't. Not anymore. He pushed the rock closer. Sweat dripped from his brow. His arms trembled with effort. If I cover this, he said, straining, no one will ever know you survived the lake. He shoved the boulder again. It slid forward. Closer. Closer. No, I shouted. He ignored me. My strength flickered like a dying flame. Panic clawed at the edge of my mind. Not yet. Not here. Not trapped under dirt to suffocate alone. I needed to stall him. Daniel, I yelled. Emily saw everything. Jack saw everything. The police will question them. They'll talk. He froze. For a moment, I thought he would stop. Then his voice dropped into a cold whisper. Children don't always remember things clearly. My heart stopped. He wouldn't. Surely he wouldn't. The boulder moved again. I reached into my cardigan desperately and found something I had forgotten in the chaos. The whistle. I pulled it out and blew it with everything I had. The sharp sound exploded through the woods, high and piercing. Daniel jerked backward, startled. He dropped the boulder, stepping away from the edge. Really? He said angrily. You think someone will hear that? Claire took the kids inside. He started to move the boulder again. I blew the whistle again. And again. My ribs screamed. My lungs burned. But I blew it until my vision blurred. Stop it, Daniel yelled. He grabbed a long branch and climbed down into the sinkhole. He jumped the last 3 feet and landed only a few feet away from me. Now it was just him and me in a dark pit with only one way out, blocked by him. He lifted the heavy branch. Mom, I'm sorry. For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. Maybe he hated doing it. Maybe he hated what he had become. But he was still going to do it. I lifted the knife. He froze. We stared at each other in the dim light. The shed above groaned as pieces of wood settled from the collapse. You won't use that, he said softly. You're my mother. And you won't kill me, I said. I'm yours. Something flickered in his face. Regret. Pain. Confusion. For a moment, I thought he would drop the branch, climb out, and run. But then anger hardened his jaw. You made me desperate. He lifted the branch higher. I held the knife tighter. I was old. I was injured. He was stronger, faster, younger. But I was not ready to die. Daniel, I whispered, if you do this, you can never undo it. He hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. Then he stepped forward. Before he could swing, a gunshot echoed through the forest. Daniel froze mid-stride. Another shout followed. Drop it. A man's voice. Deep. Commanding. Daniel turned slowly, disbelief written all over his face. At the top of the sinkhole stood a tall man with a gray beard, holding a pistol pointed downward. Beside him was Mr. Anderson, my lawyer, breathing hard. The detective. The one Mr. Anderson promised to send. Daniel's eyes went wide. This isn't what it looks like, he said quickly. She fell. I was helping her. I swear. Drop the branch, the detective growled. Daniel's hands trembled. But instead of dropping it, he spun around and lunged toward me, desperate, wild. He wasn't aiming to hurt me anymore. He was aiming to silence me. For good. I raised the knife, bracing for impact. But then, a loud crack ripped through the air. Daniel's body jerked violently as the bullet struck his shoulder. He stumbled backward, fell. The branch slipped from his hand. He hit the dirt hard, groaning. I dropped the knife, shaking. Mr. Anderson climbed down into the pit, his face pale with worry. Mrs. Turner, he said, gripping my arm gently, we've got you. The detective climbed down next, keeping his gun trained on Daniel. You're under arrest, he said coldly. Daniel groaned, clutching his shoulder. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he whispered. No, I said softly. It wasn't. But just when I thought the nightmare was ending, a scream tore through the forest. A woman's scream. Claire. Daniel. She burst into view above the hole, her eyes wild, her hair tangled, her hands shaking. She wasn't alone. She held something. Something small. Something terrifying. Emily. Claire had her arm wrapped around Emily's chest, holding her like a shield. Emily kicked and cried, tears streaming down her face. Let my daughter go, Daniel shouted weakly, but Claire didn't let go. She didn't even look at him. She stared straight at me with rage burning in her eyes. This is all your fault, she hissed. Everything was perfect until you started changing things. The detective raised his gun. Ma'am, he said firmly, release the child. Claire pressed a small knife to Emily's neck. My blood turned to ice. I said, she screamed, this is her fault. And before anyone could move, she took a step backward. Toward the lake. Emily's scream echoed through the trees. Then Claire shouted, if she comes out of this alive, nobody will. And she dragged Emily toward the water. Claire's scream tore through the forest as she dragged Emily toward the lake, her fingers tight around the little girl's arm. Leaves crunched under her shoes. Emily struggled wildly, reaching out toward me even though I was still trapped in the sinkhole with the detective and Mr. Anderson. Grandma, she cried, help me. My heart nearly stopped. Claire wasn't thinking clearly anymore. She wasn't planning. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't even trying to hide her madness. She was a cornered animal, dangerous and unpredictable, fighting for the last piece of control she could grab. The detective shouted from above, Claire, stop where you are. Don't take another step. But she didn't stop. She took another step toward the water. Another. Then another. Her hair clung to her face. Her breath came out in ragged gasps. Her eyes darted desperately between the detective's gun, the sinkhole, and the open water. You don't understand, she screamed. We had one chance, one, and she ruined everything. That money was supposed to save us. It was supposed to save you. I shouted back. Emily is a child. Look at what you're doing to her. She jerked Emily closer. She'll be fine if you just stop talking. Put the knife down, the detective ordered again, slower, calmer. You're making things worse. You hurt that child and there will be no going back. Claire's eyes twitched. Her grip tightened. No going back, she spat. There's already no going back. Everything is ruined. The camera, Daniel told me, he said there might be a camera. The police will see everything. Daniel groaned from the dirt where he lay, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Claire, please don't, please. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at anyone. She only looked at Emily. Stop crying, she hissed at the child. Just stop crying. But Emily couldn't stop. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Her breath hitched in sharp sobs. She was terrified. And I knew Claire's type. The more frightened a child got, the more cornered Claire felt. She'd panic, lose control, make a terrible mistake. I had to stop this. I'm coming up, I said quietly. The detective grabbed my arm. Mrs. Turner, no, stay down. She's unstable. She won't hurt me, I whispered. I'm the one she wants. That wasn't exactly true. Claire didn't want me. She wanted the life she imagined, the money she thought she deserved, the power she thought she was losing. But I knew one thing, she wouldn't let Emily go unless I was closer. Slowly, painfully, I pulled myself toward the dirt wall. My ribs throbbed. My arms trembled. Every movement hurt, but I kept climbing. The detective and Mr. Anderson helped me, supporting my weight as I reached the top of the sinkhole. When I stood on solid ground again, Claire's eyes widened. She hadn't expected me to survive. She hadn't expected me to stand. She hadn't expected me to fight. You're supposed to be dead, she whispered. I'm very much alive, I said calmly. She tightened her grip on Emily. Don't come closer. she screamed. I didn't move yet. I kept my voice soft. Claire, you're scared. She flinched. No, I'm angry. No, I said again. You're scared. And you're making a mistake you can't undo. She shook her head violently. You don't know anything. You're a mother, I said. I know that much. And mothers protect children. They don't threaten them. For a moment, just a moment, her face changed. Something soft flickered behind the madness. Something human. Something that remembered who she used to be. But the moment passed. She shook her head. Tears spilled down her cheeks. No, no, I'm not going to prison. I'm not losing everything. I'm not. Her foot slipped on the wet bank. Her body lurched. Emily screamed. Claire caught her balance, but she stumbled dangerously close to the water. Claire, I said, my voice firming, listen to me. If you take one more step, you'll fall. And you'll take her with you. The detective aimed his gun again. Do not move. I can't go to jail. Claire shrieked. You can fix this, I said. Right now. You can put the child down. You can step away. You can surrender. The judge will see that you didn't hurt her. You can still make one good choice today. Her breathing grew faster, harsher. I can't, she whispered. I can't. I can't. She started dragging Emily backward again, toward the deeper water. And that was when I remembered something. A moment from years earlier. A memory. Claire didn't know how to swim. She admitted it once in the kitchen when we first moved into the house together. She said she hated lakes, hated deep water, hated not knowing what was below her feet. And that fear, more than jail, more than money, more than me, was her weakest point. Claire, I said, my voice low and firm, if you go into that water, you'll drown. She froze. Her eyes flicked toward the lake. The water rippled. It was deep, dark, cold, silent, a place that didn't forgive mistakes. She swallowed hard. I won't drown, she said unconvincingly. You will, I said. But Emily won't. Her grip faltered. What do you mean? She demanded. I mean, I said gently, slowly stepping forward, if you let her go, I will pull her out. If you hold on to her, you'll both go under. But if you let her go, there is still hope. For her. And for you. She stared at me. At the lake. At Emily. Then she screamed violently, her voice cracking. She took everything from me. And she yanked Emily toward the water. But at that exact second, something unexpected happened. Emily twisted her little body as hard as she could and bit Claire's arm. Claire screamed in pain. Her grip loosened. For one tiny instant, Emily was free. And in that instant, I ran. Not fast, not strong, but fast enough. I lunged, grabbed Emily under the arms, and pulled her to my chest, stumbling backward onto the grass. Emily sobbed into me. Claire stumbled forward alone. Her foot slipped again. And this time, she fell. Straight into the lake. Her scream cut through the air but ended quickly as the water swallowed her. The detective rushed forward immediately. Stay with the child, he shouted to me. He ran to the edge and jumped into the water, diving beneath the surface. I held Emily tightly, stroking her hair, whispering softly. It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe now. Daniel groaned from the ground. Claire, he cried. Claire. Emily trembled in my arms but whispered, Grandma, is she dead? I didn't answer. Not yet. We waited. The detective resurfaced after several seconds, pulling Claire with him. She coughed violently, gasping, choking, but she was alive. Barely. He dragged her to the grass, rolled her to her side, and kept her from slipping back into the water. She sobbed uncontrollably, shaking, broken, defeated. It's over, he said. It was over. The nightmare that nearly stole my life, my granddaughter, and my family finally cracked apart like ice breaking under sunlight. Police arrived minutes later. Paramedics, social workers, deputies. Questions flooded the scene. Statements were taken. Evidence was gathered. Daniel was handcuffed. Claire was handcuffed. Emily and Jack were taken inside the house by a social worker while I was wrapped in a blanket and seated on a bench near the water. The ache in my ribs throbbed. My clothes clung heavily to my body. But I was alive. Hours later, after statements and photographs and tears, the sheriff approached me. Mrs. Turner, he said gently, your grandchildren can stay with you. Do you want them to? I nodded without hesitation. Yes, I said. They're my family. And Daniel and Claire?" he asked. I looked out over the lake. The same lake where they tried to kill me. The same lake where I once swam as a girl. The same lake where truth found its way out. "They made their choices," I said. "Now they must live with them." The sheriff nodded. Then he said something I would never forget. "You saved those children's lives today." But I shook my head. "They saved mine too," I said softly. "Especially Emily." He gave a small smile and walked away. When the sun began to set, I took Emily and Jack inside. I made them warm soup. I wrapped them in blankets. I told them they were safe. They fell asleep holding onto me tightly, one on each side. I sat between them with my hand on their backs, listening to their quiet breathing. A long, deep calm washed over me. Tomorrow would bring questions, trials, custody hearings, and courtrooms. But tonight, in this small moment, we were safe. And alive. And together. Life lesson. Evil often grows in silence, but so does courage. If someone tries to control you, harm you, or silence you, your strength comes not from fighting alone, but from fighting smart. And the truth, no matter how people try to bury it, always finds a way to rise. I kissed Emily's forehead, then Jack's. Then I whispered to the quiet room. Nothing, no amount of money, will ever be worth the price of a human soul. And for the first time in months, I felt peace settle gently over my heart. The story ends here, but our lives, mine, Emily's, and Jack's, were just beginning again.